Today we're breaking down the Sony PZ 16-35 f4. This is a phenomenal feature-packed ultra-wide lens. As you can see, great size, great weight here, and I can't wait to break this thing down for you to figure out if it's gonna be a good fit for you. Here are some basic specs for you. Well, I tell you who I would recommend this lens for. It's definitely a video tailored lens, but again, don't discount it if you are a photographer. It's got great performance, but it is tailored toward video for a few reasons and features. One being the power zoom here, which is what PZ stands for. It's also got an aperture ring, and most notably, it does have the great feature of being internally zooming. So it doesn't extend as you zoom, making it great for gimbal work and just having a great balance overall. So let's first talk about the build and features of this lens. It's a Sony G series lens. It's got a great build and feel. As you can see, the size is fantastic. It weighs an astonishing 353 grams, or just over 3/4 of a pound, which is phenomenal. Like I said, it does have an aperture ring on here, as well as the power zoom toggle. It's also got a customizable manual focus hold button and an automatic manual focus switch, as well as a click switch and an iris lock for your aperture ring. So this thing is feature packed to say the least, and it's just amazing what they've really put onto this thing. At the front, you'll find a little focus ring, which is nice and smooth and accurate, electronically coupled to your camera, along with the zoom ring here, which does not have hard stops. So if you are used to a hard stop zoom, this might take a little bit of getting used to, but you do adapt quite quickly, I must say. On the front, you'll find 72mm filter threads with Sony's proprietary coatings that help to reduce ghosting and flare. And on the back, we've got a nice metal mount with a rubber gasket for your confidence when it comes to weather sealing. So overall, it's a phenomenal build with a ton of features packed in, great construction, great feel. Really, for me, this lens has pretty much everything you could want, and for build, I give it a solid 4.5 stars. Next up, let's talk about the performance of this lens, and I'm happy to say, despite its size, this thing is a powerhouse in terms of performance. First off, it is an f4, so it's not the fastest lens out there, but it's going to be adequate for most people. In low light, it's going to struggle a little bit if you are working in extreme environments, but again, for most people, I say that this lens is going to serve you just fine. It's really going to shine for things like real estate, or if you're doing inside videos. 16mm is a great focal length. It's nice and wide, and 35, although it's not the biggest focal range ever, is going to let you get in and shoot the details when you need it. Now, in terms of autofocus, this thing is phenomenally quick. It actually has 6 of Sony's new linear XD focusing motors, which allows this lens to focus incredibly quickly and basically silently. Now, 2 of those motors are going to power the autofocus, and 4 of those motors are going to contribute to this thing's power zoom. So it is covered in terms of motors, and the autofocus definitely does not disappoint. Again, being a video tailored lens, this thing should perform well in terms of focus breathing, shouldn't it? And I'm happy to say that it does. It's very well controlled, and in terms of the manual focus, it's a nice, smooth, and accurate experience. Now let's talk about photography for a second. Here are some of my favorite photos to date with this lens. I hope you like them. As you can see, it is sharp where it needs to be, and we'll check out a detailed look at sharpness in a moment here. In terms of the bokeh of this lens, being an f4, it's not gonna be anything mind-blowing. In fact, that's probably the main thing that kind of takes away from this lens for me. It's not gonna blow you away, but rarely does an ultra-wide lens blow anybody away anyways. That's not why we buy these lenses, and it's tough to get any sort of compression that looks really, really good.
It's worth noting that this lens's minimum focus distance is actually quite impressive. It is variable, but allowing you to get nice and close to your subject.
16mm is great for fitting tons in the frame, like indoor shots, landscapes, and 35mm is a great overall focal length for shooting anything standard, and you can even get away with some portraits. In terms of flare control, this lens does perform quite well, as you can see here. No complaints there. And in terms of stopping down to get some sun stars, well, it's nothing spectacular. Let me know what you think about my photos down in the comments, and now let's jump into a detailed look at the sharpness and optics.
And let's do a bit of pixel peeping here at 35mm wide open at f4 to start. The center of the image is razor sharp with great contrast. As we get into the corners, it's actually a lot better than I thought it would be. Insanely sharp even into the very edges at f4. So very impressed by that. Let's stop down here to f5.6 to see maybe a tiny bit of an improvement, but there's not much to improve upon. f8 here looking pretty darn good, and f11 still very, very sharp across the board. Again, down to f16, and here we might be able to notice just a tiny hint of softness start to come in, and we can stop all the way down to f22 here. Overall at 35 millimeters, a great performance. And here we are at 16 millimeters. Excuse the lighting and the positioning. It was really hard to get so close because of the minimum focus distance at 16 millimeters. My light source is more or less directly behind my camera. The center of the image around here is again razor sharp at 16. As we get into the edges, a phenomenal performance. A great job wide open here at 16 millimeters as well. Stopping down to f5.6, we see a bit of an improvement. Incredibly, down to f8, looking very good. f11 here is the same story. Down to f16 once again, we can start to see just a hint of degradation, and then down to f22, and it's just a little bit softer than at 35 millimeters stopped all the way down. Overall, a phenomenal performance optically. Congrats to Sony on this lens's image quality. And here's a quick look at the distortion and vignetting of this lens. We can notice a bit of pincushion distortion here wide open at 35 millimeters. Use our profile correction to clean that right up and see a little bit of vignetting disappear. Definitely a little bit to speak of, but nothing too crazy. Here we are at 16 millimeters, and we will see quite a bit of barrel distortion, pretty pronounced. The edges, we can see some vignetting as well. Once again, use that profile correction to clean that right up. So although distortion is common in wide angle lenses, this one doesn't escape it either, but use that profile correction to clean it up even into the corners. With this lens, sharpness and image quality is a win for me.
So overall for performance, I think this lens is a winner, especially for a G series lens. It ticks a lot of the boxes that we're looking for, and for performance as a whole, I give it 4.5 stars. So touching on the value of this guy, coming in at $1,200 US, it's not overly cheap, but it's not super expensive either like some of the G Masters that we see. And I think for the price and given all the features packed in here, I think it's actually quite fair. There are some cheaper offerings like the Tamron 17 to 28 and the newer 20 to 40, which isn't quite as wide, but will get the job done in most situations. It's gonna be really hard to find something that's this feature packed in this size and weight for the price. There are some bigger, heavier, and faster lenses, but again, everything's gonna come down to the cost. So for me, the value of this thing is actually pretty good, and I give it 4 solid stars. So wrapping up, guys, I think this lens is a win, and as always, here's my personal pros and cons for you. If you have other thoughts, let me know down in the comments, and if you are a subscriber, you probably already know that I like to rate things on a scale from never think about again to consider to definitely buy. And in this case, if you're a video shooter for sure, or if you're looking for a very, very compact, feature-packed, wide-angle lens, then I would strongly consider this one. And that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks so much for watching the video. If you wanted to pick this thing up, I'll drop affiliate links down below. And like always, make mistakes, be yourself, and get out there and take some more pictures. See you next time.